is porn addiction even real? I know it's not classified or officially recognized as an addiction. Is that correct?
It is classified,
Okay.
but yeah, so let's kick it off. So when it comes to porn addiction, it falls under the category of compulsive sexual behavior disorders through the World Health Organization. So it's not classified in the DSM, and that's where either the disinformation campaign or people who don't want to acknowledge it say that it's not a quote unquote real addiction. But I mean, come on, I would love for just to be logical,
Yeah.
right? Like, I work with thousands of people who their lives are turned upside down. They
Hmm.
can't stop consuming pornography. It affects their mental, physical health in almost every capacity. And I'm happy to broadly talk about that. People's lives are falling apart.
Hmm.
Let's call a spade a spade. We don't need to
Yeah.
worry about, but it is recognized by the World Health Organization.
What is I mean, you mentioned disinformation campaign, but what would be the reasons why or the benefit? Is there any harm to your cause of like trying to spread awareness by it not being, an addiction, quote unquote?
Yeah, actually. And I have been targeted, which I won't talk about because it's kind of like Voldemort. If you talk about him, you're pulling
Okay.
him toward you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the real motivating factor there is that if it hits a tipping point, I always use the analogy of the smoking industry. It had a huge disinformation campaign, scientists in back pockets, people are being told that there is no harm. Smoking helps you relax. Like that is going on right now, and it has been for a very long time. It's billions of dollars in the industry, right? So what happened with smoking was people aren't dumb. That's why I said if we just stay logical here, people are not dumb. People realized, in fact, smoking is addictive. They knew they
Hmm.
couldn't stop even if they wanted to. They realized that cancer was being caused. And right now, hopefully we'll dive into sexual arousal dysfunction, namely erectile dysfunction, that is being caused by pornography consumption and dopamine desensitization. And then third is secondhand smoke. And we know that there's more than 50% divorce rate that pornography is named to be involved in. So it very much follows the same trajectory as smoking. And my hope is that the fall off of consumption follows the same way too, because when people kind of woke up to all that, they all started backing out of using tobacco
Hmm. Hmm.
for the vast
What
majority.
what are the mechanisms that are going on in porn addiction? What's causing people to do it? Because like logically, I mean, you're right. You see it everywhere. I've talked to friends. It's definitely a real thing. But like if you look at it logically, it's like, hey man, just stop watching. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, there's two main things, but of course it's more than that. And I'm happy
Hmm.
to go deeper, I guess. But if we stay kind of more surface and wide, number one is dopamine dependency. This is named in a large number of scientific studies. I have a book out, Mind Over Explicit Matter. In that book, basically every sentence had a scientific reference where HarperCollins told me I need to take half of them out. I'm like, I want the world to know this is an opinion. This is scientifically validated. So dopamine dependency is at the core. Basically, what that means is that the brain goes back for artificially high levels of dopamine, which porn and I would love to broaden the conversation eventually to social media, especially sexualized social media, drama, violence, the whole gamut. They're considered supernormal stimuli, and porn proper is up at the top of that. So basically, it releases artificially high levels of dopamine in the system. And we know scientifically that after two exposures, which usually happens in childhood, basically the brain recalibrates and needs higher levels of dopamine. And then from there, it's tolerance building and escalation. So that's number one, dopamine dependency. Number two, reinforcement loops, right? Of the habits. So, like many people use porn at the end of the day to chill out. It's all mood regulation. Many people use it as a sleep aid. Some use it for the dopamine boost in the morning to get going. Once desensitization happens in the brain, many people have to use it to get the engine going for sexual experiences in the real world. So those are the two primary aspects, dopamine dependency and the reinforcement loops that keep it going.
Mm. With the dopamine, you mentioned it recalibrates it, re-regulates it.
Mhm.
And that happens with two exposures, which with my understanding is nowadays that can happen as young as like 8, like super young, right?
Yeah, that to me is the true danger, is that and it makes it different than because everyone's like, "Isn't it like alcohol and isn't it like, other drugs?" No, because most people don't start consuming those things. First of all, it's just different in the first place, but most people don't start consuming that until later, right? Like into young adulthood. So now we're down to the age of 8 at first exposure. Very underdeveloped brain is being exposed to these high levels of dopamine. And basically, there's maladaptation and development. So from 8 to 28, which is when young men's brains stop developing, basically it develops in the direction of seeking. And that's what dopamine is, it's the molecule of pursuit, seeking more and more of itself from sexual content, and mostly, coupled with masturbation too. So we
Hmm.
have high levels of physical and mental stimulation.
I'm curious. I have a background of fitness and sport and things like that. And as you would probably assume, my social media feed was curated at that time to be sport and fitness and things like that. But in the fitness realm, it's like pseudo-porn for like the female industry. Like they're all,
Uh-huh.
scantily clad. It's like very hypersexualized, the female
Mhm.
side of that. And I
Yes.
realize like I'm getting like scrolling through my feed. It's like I'll see male and I'll see female. And it's just like, hey, this is just the fitness industry. This is just what's going on. How does that affect the
Yeah, it's the
dopamine effect as
world,
well?
right? It's
Yeah.
terrible. Like it's the world right now, but yeah, especially in fitness, like where, fitness apparel is
Hmm.
smaller than ever, right? But, that's why lately I've said it, I feel like all the things I think are like the best things, not that they're that fabulous, but the things that resonate the most to me come out on accident once and then I kind of like anchor into them. I recently have said that, that sexualized social media is more dangerous than porn.
Hmm.
But of course, the
Interesting.
caveat is that what it lacks in intensity, it makes up in frequency, right? Because
Hmm.
people are on social media and they don't even realize that they're miswiring their brain to high levels of dopamine while they're like lounging around looking at the fitness posts.
Uh,
But it's a pull. It's a pull to the
uh-huh.
brain, and many people can feel the dopamine hit that they get from it. So, your brain will follow the conditioning that you give it. So I try to empower people by telling them curate your feed,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Like it is difficult in some people's worlds, but many people I work with, they decide to kind of forego or really limit social media for that very reason is the minute they go on, it's everywhere.
mhm. Explain to me how dopamine works. So you said it makes up for it in frequency and exposure. So if we're getting constantly exposed to it, we have like these low level of dopamine that resets our baseline and we produce less and less or get less sensitive to it.
Yeah, well, that's what tolerance building is. And
Okay.
actually, since the beginning of this year, I have been including visuals in many of the YouTube videos that I make. So I've kind of like separated out my YouTube videos. One is still like more talking head motivational. The other one, I'm calling them my briefs. I used to be a university professor. So I'm like, people need to understand this. And obviously, the visual makes it a lot easier to understand. So my point about that is those visuals are in the video. So you can check it out because it's exactly it. Like basically, the way that dopamine works in the system is you get a big spike of dopamine, super normal stimuli. You get that big spike, and then you have a crash, then a spike, and then a crash, and the crash ends up being lower, which necessitates a higher spike. And basically, with the crashes, your baseline is lowering. So that's the desensitization, is that your brain needs higher levels of stimulation to be able to feel the same. That's tolerance building, which leads to escalation of behavior where, porn proper is not stupid. The sites are organized in this way where you click on another tab and it's a higher level of intensity. It's got more going on. And then basically it's baiting you into more and more of those higher levels of dopamine. So yeah, it's basically homeostasis is the baseline that our nervous systems and our brains and our bodies are supposed to be at to be comfortable and be at peace and be calm and be
Mhm,
focused. That homeostasis has changed and it's referred to as neo homeostasis, new homeostasis,
mm.
which drives the behaviors. I talk about it in my book.
So what would be some more, what would be some healthy, some good exposures to dopamine? How should we get it as we were naturally intended?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I just want to remind you that pornography and sexualized media is a supernormal stimulus, meaning
Mm,
on the way that we get dopamine from our lives, that's on a 1 to 10 scale, right? Like
hmm
a normal, quote unquote, normal or healthy stimulus is going to be up to a level 10. So a level 10 would be, a sexual experience with your partner who actually wants to be with you, a human experience. And
hmm
on a good day, that's a 9.5. Or if you like to rock climb or skydive, I like to box. I have a boxing bag. Like boxing's awesome. I was boxing yesterday. That's probably like at home, the thing that gives me the most dopamine and like a rush. That's going to be like a 7, right on a 1 to 10 scale. So I have people, I like to, especially like when I'm on podcasts, I like to give people things they can go do right away, right?
hmm
So one pragmatic or practical exercises, one exercise, I call it dopamine determination because dopamine's different for all people, right? Like you
hmm
could box and not like it or find it boring or find it frustrating. So the dopamine determination exercise is write down free flow, like for 2 minutes, just write down everything you love to do and then circle the ones that are most exciting. Dopamine's going to be related to that excitement. Serotonin's going to be more like reading a book or watching a sunset, even going for a walk, but like going for a run is going to be dopamine producing. Then circle them. And then now this is the important part. Now do them. I ask people on my intake paperwork. I run a large practice that is worldwide. On the intake paperwork, I ask how you express your creativity and what do you do for fun. And people always write NA, not applicable. I'm like, it is absolutely applicable. And I joke about that, but to me, that's tragic. I'll say they'll put non applicable and I'll say, what do you like to do for fun? And, someone will say, I like to play pool. And then I'll say, when's the last time you played pool? And they're like, 7 years ago. Right.
Real quick, I just wanted to interrupt this conversation and say it is not lost on me how lucky I am each and every day to get to have these conversations. And I hope you guys, as the listeners, know how much I appreciate the time that you take out of your day to listen to these conversations. And I hope you get as much value out of listening to them as I did creating them. If I could just ask one quick favor, it helps so much for shows like mine if you like, subscribe, comment, do all those things. That helps the algorithm know and realize that there's value here and pushes it to more listeners. And by doing that, that allows me to get even bigger guests, more well-known guests, and have more conversations for you guys. I appreciate what you do so much. I appreciate the time that you take to listen to these conversations so much. I couldn't be here without you guys. Thank you. Now let's get back to the conversation. I was talking to Dr. James Ellis a couple weeks ago, and he specializes in loneliness and that same thing he was talking about. He's like, when people manage their time or those things like that, because they are so lonely, they do less things that are fun, and because they do less things that are fun, they're more lonely, and it's just the same cycle that occurs. And he talks about how frequently people fill their time with things that they actually enjoy and are fun.
Yeah. And did he talk about screens at all?
He did. We talked a lot about screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause screens are the driver for that.
hmm
Like, from my standpoint, well, I guess I should frame my work. In my work, I use EEG, electroencephalogram. I can see how people's brains perform. That's what I do all day, every day. I take a QEEG brain map, and then I use neuromodulation technology, which helps to alter the way that the brain is performing in terms of electrical energy. So, long story short, I can see what it's doing to people's brains, and it's causing more of that loneliness, anxiety, and depression. So that's the loop. That's the hijack loop, as I always call it, because it causes it and then it makes social anxiety higher. It makes it more difficult. And again, if you just think about it logically, the screen is where all the 11 plus dopamine is. 15, if you're on a porn site, 20, right? We said healthy dopamine, 1 to 10. So now
hmm
your brain's going, I can get a level 20 at one click of the button. Why would I get dressed and get ready and
hmm
go have to nurture this relationship with that person who can be a pain? It actually puts people in a dopamine deficit state. So now you're in a deficit when you're on a date. that
Hmm.
person is actually more annoying than they would be if your brain wasn't hooked on the high levels of dopamine. So it's the driver, the screen is the driver, and then it feels like the solution, but it's causing the loop.
Mm. I
Tragic, right?
hope yeah, I hope there's a way for us to reset this and bring it back
Uh-huh.
down. Is there a way for that?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I do in my work, and it's all measurable, which is people ask me all the time if I've invented it, but it's been around for almost 100 years. I wish I invented it because that would be totally awesome, but I'm so passionate about it because the neuromodulation technology is basically like the way of the future, right? We use medications. I think medications are band-aids. Like if you're bleeding out, you need a bandage, right? But if you want long-term health and wellness and you have a wound, you need stitches, right?
Hmm.
Neuromodulation technology is basically the stitches. So, um, my work, basically, especially for people who are addicted to pornography, we need to close the gap, just like stitches, in the brain performance pattern. I can identify the areas and the levels of dysfunction. And of course, the bigger the dysfunction, the more the gap has to be closed. But as we close the gap, now people can go back into their life and go rollerblading and feel pleasure and joy and go on a date and not feel the social anxiety. And that is what allows people to step out of that loneliness and to be able to use their mind and their body in new ways again
Hmm.
that creates the life that they want, not this loop that gets them more of passive content.
Mm. So walk me through what would actually be occurring. Are we putting like a helmet on, like electrodes on, and then are you
No,
telling us to think or do certain things?
yeah, I wish I had it. It's a headband, and I never have
Okay.
mine up here at my desk. But basically, it's a wearable technology. It goes across the frontal lobe. There's sensors over the ears, and then to take the map, you plug in one sensor. And I know exactly what you're talking about. My husband and I have a brick and mortar practice. When I started doing this, like huge computer,
Hmm.
cap with all the gel that has to go in. We're at the day and age, and people are always like, isn't that big computer and cap better? And I liken it, I have a lot of analogies because the concepts are complex, but I liken it to a landline. Like, of course, a landline phone is awesome, but now cell phones are more awesome, right? We can use
Hmm.
them wherever we are, and that's where the technology has gotten to. So I have my own app, Dr. Trish Leigh, and I've partnered with the manufacturer for the hardware. So it's the hardware and software. You can use it at home. You plug that sensor in. You can take the brain map at home. It takes 28 minutes, populates in the app, populates in my portal, and then I meet people on Zoom. But it shows exactly what's going on in there. And then again, it's complex. So and trying to simplify it, I have named the two primary brain patterns that I've seen and I've studied. I completed a study with 200 brain maps on porn addiction and erectile dysfunction, PIED.
Hmm.
But I call the two brain patterns strain brain and drain brain. Strain brain is a brain that's running too fast and too slow. So excessive stress, anxiety, right? Wired, and then also tired, memory, brain fog, exhaustion, energy levels. That's strained brain. That's when a person's really in the cycle. Now, if you've been in it for a while, then you tip over into drain brain, and that's basically like too much neutral in the brain. You're stuck on the couch, your motivation tanks. That's where arousal dysfunction comes in.
Mm. So when they put on the headband and do the brain mapping, the 20 minutes, is it like, are you asking like a series of questions or like telling to think about things?
Yeah,
What's going on there?
no, it's there's two it's a baseline assessment, so basically in two states. One is active state and the other is resting state. There's known scientific differences between those two states, which actually in the people that I work with who do have screen compulsions and sexual compulsions, that difference is often the opposite. So that difference looks at if your brain can basically slide into the relax mode by itself. And when people are hooked on high levels of dopamine, their brain can't do that. So it's not really looking at like many different states, but honestly, like active and resting state is enough. That's enough to show how a brain's performing when you're thinking, when you're engaged versus when you're turning your brain off.
What would be the differences in protocol for somebody who's in the drain brain versus strain brain to recover and start getting back to normal levels?
Yeah, this is really important. And about a year ago, maybe two now, I would have people join my program without a brain map, but now I know these two protocols, so I need to see what a person's brain is doing. So I always do at least a brief assessment, but I always do a brain map. And so essentially, if a person has strained brain, and I can tell you, they're called brain waves. Basically, the brain waves, it's called high beta. That is the very fast speed that you feel if you're stressed out or if you have anxiety. That's the first piece in strained brain. The other piece is delta and theta, very slow speed. Those are the speeds for sleep. So basically, like a person's brain in strained brain is using excessive gassing or acceleration and excessive braking. We have to bring down the extra fast and the extra slow. Drain brain's the opposite. Those are actually low. It's alpha in the middle. Alpha is the mode for calm. And historically speaking, which I find this to be very interesting. I know, my interests are different than most people, but historically speaking, people could never have too much alpha before screens. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't possible to get your brain too calm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what screens do with the elevated levels of dopamine that are very, very high is that basically there's much too much alpha and the brain gets stuck in neutral. And this is why
Mm.
people feel depressed, unmotivated, and they have arousal dysfunction. And again, if you're stuck in neutral, like now it's time to become sexually aroused. First of all, your brain needs a level 20 from pornography, and you're basically stuck at a 2.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have an 18-point gap between arousal, and that's where, ED comes from for a lot of people.
Mm. Mm. I know a big problem for most people when it comes to addiction is like they're not unaware of the fact that it's hurting their lives. Like they want to stop, they want to improve this. They're like, okay, I'm just gonna stop, and then they do for a day or a little bit, and then they start up again, and it's that self-loathing, that self-repeating cycle. So how do you work with them to?
Hmm.
What's the
Hmm.
process there?
Yeah. So that's why I really believe that my work is the solution. I know that sounds self-righteous, but it's not. I wish I invented it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people stay stuck because there is such high levels of neurological dysfunction. So I've been trying to be bolder, like not salesy, but bolder, letting people know if you're working on this with your mind and your body and you're not succeeding, it's because that gap in dysfunction from the optimal level is so big. So when people join my program, first of all, we identify it in the brain map, pops off the page for most people. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, I can see where that's coming from. Strain brain, drain brain, or you can have a mixed version. But then in the first 3 weeks of my program, I tell people just use the app and train your brain. It's passive treatment. It does it for them. The more they think, the worse off they usually are. And, I liken it all the time to if you have a weak body, you need to have that, right? Fitness. If you have a weak body, you have to have that assessment with your personal trainer. And then your personal trainer has to identify which muscles you're targeting and which moves, which fitness moves, and which weight levels you're going to use to address those weaknesses. Basically, that's what I do in the brain. So I set very specific protocols for each person based on what I see their brain doing. I put it in the app. So then when they pull up the app and hit the train button, they don't have to do anything except for engage with the feedback from the app. And the feedback is like, if you want strong biceps, you don't have to talk to 23 people on how to get strong biceps, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just need a set of weights and you got to rep those weights every day. And then when your
Mm.
20-pound weights are light because you're stronger, now you have to hit the 30 pounds, then you hit the 40, then you hit the 50. That's what my app does dynamically. It basically moves a person along as their
Mm.
brain's getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're at in technology. So that's why I want people to know, like,
Yeah,
if you're stuck, there's solutions for it.
that's really cool. What is the recovery timeline that you usually see?
Yeah, my program is a 6-month program on purpose. That's after, more than a decade and a half of doing this. Originally my program had lots of iterations, and then it's a 6-month program because basically I'm helping people to unwire the pattern that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
rewire, and then hardwire. The unwire usually happens pretty quickly. The rewire tends to take a little bit longer. And then basically by the 5th or 6th month, we have the hardwiring started, and then people springboard into continuing the work by themselves, again, likening it to a personal trainer. But the most important thing for people to know is It doesn't take 6 months, right?
Mm.
Like fitness, right? After a week or two, you are feeling stronger already. Like to lock this in, we need to make sure we've got it locked in. But typically, after 3 weeks, there's been significant changes in people's brains. Then I offer a digital program. It has 94 lessons in it, which I consider to be like the nutrition program,
Mm.
right? And I don't at least like, you don't want to give a person behavioral changes when they're caught in that weakness of the neurological dysfunction. So the idea is you get more fit and then you don't want to eat the chips because you're
Mhm.
feeling stronger. And then you have more control and willpower and discipline because your brain's in a better mode. So typically after the first month, then they engage in what's a 90-day, a 94-day digital program. And that facilitates, it syncs up. It's neurological, right? Brain, mind, psychological, and physiological body.
That's really cool. I'm currently in the habit of, well, I've been doing this 100-day challenge here for myself that I just decided to do because I was feeling bored. But it involves a cold plunging every day
Hmm.
because I have a cold plunge.
Hmm.
Sucks. It sucks every time. It's
Uh-huh.
not
Uh-huh.
fun, but
Uh-huh.
it's really interesting knowing that it sucks, but knowing that it's only going to suck for like 30 seconds, and
Uh-huh.
then I'll be fine after the 30 seconds, and then after
Uh-huh.
that 3 minutes, I will feel better than I did going into it, and I'll be more excited and
Love
more
it.
ready to do all these things.
Hmm.
Is
Love
that
it.
kind of like what we're doing with your program here? Is you're like
Kind of. Yeah.
letting them do
It's a
something
li-
hard?
No, it's actually
Uh,
very easy. Like my
mm,
program is actually very easy. So like you don't even I always tell people literally there's no program like it because there's no
mm,
program that you enjoy doing. It feels good and you get the outcomes, right?
mm,
Like there
mm-hmm,
is no other program like that. So when they're engaging with the app, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'll explain it. When they engage with the app, the first thing that I have a person do is just stream, use streaming services. So again, like another new thing I've been saying is like, let's use our screens to rewire our brains instead of miswiring, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's based on something called operant conditioning, which most people know about Pavlov's dog, which is classical
mm-hmm,
conditioning. Operant conditioning takes that a little bit further. So basically, the way that it works is when you're streaming whatever you want, obviously not sexualized content. Like one of my clients, he was telling me how he streams Smallville. You remember that
I
with
do,
Henry
yeah,
Cavill, like not sexualized, just fun, engaging. It's got some
yeah,
action, but not violence. That's a perfect example of what, people could or should stream. So basically, when you're streaming, if your brain hits the marks in the protocol that I set, then the screen plays bright and the audio plays loud. If your
mm,
brain goes back to strain brain or drain brain, the the video and the audio go low. And salience, science shows, is the most important thing out of the gates. Like you have to wanna, it's better if you
mm-hmm,
wanna see what's on the screen. So that's how we have people start. It's just that simple. And it actually works. And everything I do is measurable.
yeah.
There's data.
Well, so they're wearing this headband in real time, and it's like upping it based off of their stuff in real time.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I always tell people like find a sanctuary,
mm,
quiet chair in a corner and dedicate time. Make sure it's something you want to see and you can kind of like get on a roll. And especially for people with pornography, think about how this works. I love this. Like if you're watching a show and you actually want to see the next one, it starts to habit replace that reinforcement loop too. So, for 30 minutes a day, you sit down and it's regulating the brain waves for
mm,
you. And then going back to the plunge, the cold plunge, what you're doing when you get in the cold plunge, you have a stress spike,
mm-hmm,
which I can see that in people's graphs. So you get into the water, you're freezing, your system spikes, right? Stress.
mm-hmm,
Then you likely use your breath or your mind with focus to bring those stress levels down. You're doing the work in that regard. You put yourself in a stressful situation and you regulated yourself. But cool thing about cold plunge is that it is one of the ways to get and maintain highest dopamine levels from an activity in the real world. If you then, once you regulate and you stay in, it's been shown to produce high levels of dopamine. So it's a really good, kind of dopamine stack, dopamine replacement activity from a real world activity.
well, I'm glad I'm doing something right
Yeah.
because it's not fun. Well,
No.
how do you responsibly use your screens and your social media? Because you have a social media presence, you have a YouTube presence.
Hmm.
Is there a way to use that responsibly, or is it just like, hey, if
Hmm.
it's an evil that
Hmm.
I'm okay?
Yeah. And it really does depend on your ability to regulate. Like, I'm a really regulated person through the work. I always joke.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if you saw that commercial for the hair club for men, like it's a bald guy and then it was plugs back then, you know?
Yeah.
So like bald and then he's a full head of hair. Like that's me in this work.
Mm-hmm.
My brain was so jacked up, 20 years ago, and I have the data. It came down very quickly. I have 5 children. So, and now they're young adults, but it's so cool. Like, it still is like my sons went to Japan and my younger son
Mm-hmm.
had to be rushed to the Japanese hospital in an ambulance. He's totally fine, but like the difference is that happens and it's like the cold plunge. I'm like, he's on his way to the hospital, but immediately I can bring it back down.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I'm regulated, which means I can go on my screens and honestly, I feel them messing with me
Mm-hmm.
immediately. But, I do what I need to do. 15 minutes later, I'm off and I make sure I get back into the world to bring down the stressors that I feel going up from being on, especially social media. Every time I go on social
Mm-hmm.
media, I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I stink.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you're fine. Just get that post out. And then immediately
Yeah.
I walk away because it is like, it's an artificial environment of people showing their very best selves. I've threatened to put all the crap of my life out there just to be the one person who's posting like just real life,
Yeah,
so.
100%. It's really funny. I will be like on a roll. I'll be working on the stuff, doing my podcast briefs, doing everything that I'm doing, and then I'll just like habitually just like instant grab my phone and like my thumb just
Mhm.
floats to the
Yeah.
Instagram, and then I'll
Mhm.
be like, I'll catch myself there for like 5 minutes like scrolling, and
Mhm.
I'll realize like, oh my goodness, like my motivation, like everything, my role is like just completely gone. It's crazy how fast it
Mhm.
just sucks it out.
It's wild. Yeah. I'm putting together a new program that I'm very excited about. I'm calling it Desire Rewire. And I've been putting together all these assessments and things like that. And that's one of the questions on the assessment. Like, do you find your thumb
Mm-hmm.
scrolling before you realize it? And that is a marker that your brain's pulling you back for the dopamine. And like for me, that was never like I never allowed scrolling to be a source of dopamine.
Mm,
So like the pull to it, it's actually a stressor for me,
mm,
not a dopamine pull because it's never, but generationally too. I'm older than you. I'm older than people who are pulled in. My son Declan runs our nonprofit. He's 22 and he's been on a Minecraft bender for 2 weeks. He just admitted it today. I've been watching and he's like, I gotta get my life together. And like, and then I said to him, go build some stuff in the real world, man. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, cause you can do that. That is my dopamine. Like, uh, my family calls it the stampede because my office is on the top of our house. And like, I run down the stairs, there's 4 flights of stairs. And then I run back up. Like, that's my stampede back to being able to kind of get the dopamine from building the things that I'm building in the real world. That's what I
Mm,
want people to do.
yeah. I mean, I've been in times where I've deleted all social media from my phones, from my life, and like that's the best time. It's unfortunate, like if you're doing a podcast or something like that, like social media is a vital part of like building it
Mhm.
and doing that thing. And so it's for me, it's like trying to navigate how I can do it responsibly and not get
Mhm.
sucked in because I know I'll get sucked in because the
Mhm.
algorithms are made to get me pulled in. And that's why I
Mhm.
like long form so much, is because like I could just have these real amazing conversations. So
Mhm.
my ideal scenario is I do the long form and I have somebody manage and do all the social media
Definitely,
so I
and
can be
I
completely off.
have people who manage all you can tell when I posted it because 'cause it's
Hmm.
got the absolute vibe. I just posted my husband, he's lived in this country for 50 years, and he became a citizen today,
I
and,
saw
like,
that. Congrats.
that post feels just like me because I actually posted it
Yeah.
myself, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
which is so cool, right? So, like but I think that is the beauty of social media, like, I get to shout that out, and that's really fun and exciting, and Declan took this picture of me, and so cute, like and then, besides, my Instagram was just hacked a couple weeks ago, and
Saw that
tragically,
too.
all those photos are gone. Like, it is a way that I also can kind of like curate that for
Hmm.
myself and have it there and look back at those things. So, there is beauty in social media if you're regulated enough to not get sucked into that. And you're absolutely right. I'm very intentional in my life. Like, I've been doing this a long time. I know what I need for myself to be able to stay balanced and regulated. Mine doesn't
Mhm.
typically have to do with screens. It's more schedule.
Mhm.
Like I'll overschedule myself into oblivion, you know? So like for me,
Mm.
I have a calendar. I know it's discipline, right? Like I know
Mhm.
when I'm doing what I want to do. I know when I'm working. I know when I'm working out. I know when I'm chilling. Chilling's even scheduled in because if it's not scheduled in, it's not real, right?
Mhm.
So,
I you've mentioned regulated a few different times. Like what does that actually mean? Like I
mhm.
hear it all the time. I'm regulated. I'm regulated.
uh-huh,
What does
uh-huh.
that mean?
Yeah, it means that basically your brain is optimally wired, right? Like if you're so on my brain map, uh, the brain maps that I do with people, the closer your brain is to all green, the more regulated or optimized the brain performance pattern is. And basically, the more optimized it is, your brain can flow with circadian rhythms, right? So, circadian rhythms mean you feel calm and peaceful and focused all day. If you need to deeply concentrate, you got it. If something stressful happens, you can respond to it, not react, and then recover very quickly. You know, like the example with the ambulance. Then, and thankfully, I'm like this now, and it's just such a gift, you know. Then I get in bed and it takes 15 minutes to drift off to sleep. I sleep all night long, feel great, wake up ready to take on my life again. That's a
Mm.
regulated brain. It's an optimally wired brain, which gets you the ability to make the decisions and do all the things that you want. You don't ever feel pulled, like when it comes to compulsion or addiction,
Mhm.
you don't feel pulled to something to regulate your mood, to change your mood and improve it for you because there's no need.
Mm.
That's the, and then I mentioned the word flow just to go back to that for a second, because if you know the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who's like the father of flow state. Like it's so
Mhm.
cool. Flow state comes from the optimized brain pattern. That's what regulation is that you can feel in the zone and, you know, kind of feeling awesome even when you're brushing your teeth. And that
Mm.
comes from, you know, the
Yeah.
brain that's wired in so that you can rock out your best life.
So if somebody was listening, or if you were looking at somebody and they didn't have the brain map, could you be able to tell they were regulated based off of their ability to like come back
Definitely.
down from highs or come back up from lows? What would be some telltale signs?
Definitely, but that's type sniping, so I try not to snipe people even though well, it's pretty wild because first of all, brain's attune. Our brain's
Mm.
attune, and you've probably felt this experience, like, when you meet a person who's regulated, like, you walk away, even if they didn't say anything in particular, you walk away feeling better, right? And there's
Mm.
some people, you walk into the room, they don't have to talk, you leave feeling more stressed out.
Mhm.
So, like, the telltale signs are you know, and this comes with no judgment because I can even talk about myself. Like
Mhm.
my rate of speech was double in the past. You know what I mean? And now
Oh.
people on YouTube mock me for talking too slow. I'm like, I'll take it all day long because I was like literally like, you know, because I was
Mm.
up here. I was, and when I was a university professor, when I'd walk through the hall,
Mhm.
everybody would know it's me because it was like clip clop, clip clop, clip clop, you know?
Mm.
So people who are stressed out, you can feel that coming off of them. It's like heat. That's what high beta, that fast energy does. It's like they're moving fast. A lot of times it creates anger and irritability. Anybody who's ragey has too much high beta.
Mm.
That's just an absolute fact. If you have road rage, you have too much high beta. Like that's your inability to control your emotional state, right? Regulation is you have the ability to control your emotional state, your body, your mental state. So then people who are dysregulated in the other direction, you know, they can't get off the couch, they can't get out of bed. These are people with not enough energy in the system. People who have the other end of strained brain, they drink 5 cups of coffee a day or energy
Mhm.
drinks. They know they have to stimulate their brain nonstop to get through the day, right? And this is where
Mm.
pornography or social media come into play. If you're in the middle of working and you don't even know you're doing it, but you end up clicking on another tab, that's your brain saying, I need a hit of dopamine to keep going.
Mm.
That's what it is. And you're accustomed to getting it from wherever you get it from. So that's
Mhm.
why you go back to that, you know,
Mm.
modality. Once on a podcast, the person asked me, and they caught me off guard actually. And I told you I'm not really like a super screen addicted person, but they're like, what is your screen time thing that you
Mhm.
do? And it gave me pause, but it's totally true. Right now, it used to be Poshmark. Like I look for
Mm.
cool shoes on Poshmark, and right now, like in my life, I look at this Bernie Doodle website. And before my Instagram got hacked, I would feel
Yeah.
the pull to wanna look at puppies and Poshmark. Like, that is absolutely true. So,
Mm.
like, if I'm working and puppies pop into my mind, like, because I wanna get these super cute Bernie doodles. I have a dog, he's 13, Chewbacca,
Mhm.
and I feel like I'm cheating on him when I look at puppies, but, like, when that pops into my mind, that's literally a call to take a break, and I
Mm.
know that because the only time I feel the pull is when I've been in my chair too long, and I literally just need to get out of my chair, put some music on, go eat something, take a
Mhm.
30-minute break, and I'm back to business.
I recently got this app. I think it's called One Thing, but I can like
Mhm,
choose the apps that I want blocked.
mhm,
So I did all social media, like everything. I did my email because I'll find myself getting sucked into like email or podcast that stuff and just start working
mhm.
right away. But it's really cool. It'll block all these apps that you choose until you do quote unquote the one thing that you put in there to do. And it doesn't just like let you
Cool.
say I did it. You actually have to take a picture of like the action, and then it'll use
Oh,
AI to
nice.
analyze it, and then it'll actually start a timer. So for me, like I read a lot as is, but I like to read in the afternoon. So all those things are blocked until I take that picture of me reading, and then it'll unblock once I'm actually done. So it's been
Sweet.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That's really cool because I always tell people, like in recovery, a really powerful step is to change your mental and physical space. So even
Mm.
taking of the photo, even if you're like cheating, you have to change your mental and physical space. And when you do that, the likelihood that you don't just automatically go into that behavior,
Hmm.
increases exponentially.
Mm.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's a cool
That's very
and
cool.
you really can't even cheat. Like you have to take it.
Mhm.
You have to
Uh-huh.
premeditate your cheating because it'll
Right.
start the timer after you take the photo. So it's like, let
Yeah.
me take this photo, and then 30 minutes later the ads will open up. So it's always like, well, the time's gonna pass anyway. Just might as well do the thing that I was
Do the
supposed to be
thing that I
doing.
said. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it gives people the opportunity in recovery, especially from porn addiction. When it
Hmm.
comes to porn addiction, I just said it to a client today where like the compulsion is powerful, but the defense mechanisms around it are even more powerful, meaning like he was lying to his
Mm.
partner, so like that app actually gives you the opportunity to be in integrity. And every
Mm.
time you are integrity, it's not even about another person. You prove to yourself you can do the thing that you said you were going to do. So I really
Hmm.
love that because it is setting you up for success, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, really cool.
Is there any level of porn that is acceptable in your mind? Do you think like
Uh-uh.
if people look at it once a month, no, zero?
No. Is there any level of heroin that's acceptable in your mind?
Depends
I
on who
mean,
you ask.
people,
Professor
I know,
Carl Hart says he does
I
it
know,
responsibly.
I know. But, the answer is, and studies show that even at one time a month, that it seeps into all of the, aspects of a person's life that become destructive at higher levels of consumption. So I say no because,
Mm.
like, I love to bring people back to their why. Why?
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
why? Like, that's just a justification, right? That is a defense mechanism going back. Like, if you have a porn quote unquote habit and you get it all the way down to one time a month, you don't need to do it one time a month. And what I want people to know, this is how the brain works. Your brain is being conditioned. You're conditioning it. You're teaching it, right? Like literally. And then the neural pathways are adapting to the environment and to the conditions that you're setting. So, like, why would you leave it at one time a month or one time a week? Because you're conditioning your brain to get high levels of dopamine, but forget not forget the dopamine. Let's talk about what the dopamine gets linked to. Dopamine's getting linked to whatever thing you're consuming. So, like, most people want to have a partner and want to experience an awesome sex life in their life.
Mhm.
So now, with whatever frequency, you're going back to taking in other people in a sexual performance. Like, all roads don't lead to the same destination. Those two
Mhm.
roads are leading you to two very different destinations. I want people to take the road that leads them to the destination of the life that they want to create. There's really no life that most people want that porn is leading them in the direction.
Mm. What are some negative side effects specifically with like sexual function and things that comes with like porn addiction? Because I've heard like the brain gets wired and neuroplasticity from all the habits that you do. So some people, if they watch it frequently enough and that's what they use to get aroused, they then can only become aroused from porn and
Yeah.
not from their partner.
Yeah, that goes back to what I already told you. So we know that it creates dopamine desensitization in the reward center and the reward circuitry, which
Uh,
then that's the neo homeostasis, right? And then, so like going back to our conversation about developmentally, right? Age of 8, the seeds of addiction are planted. If those
mm-hmm,
seeds are watered, you're watering your brain in the direction of consuming sexual performances for high levels of stimulation. Very high. We'll just call them a 20, right?
mm-hmm,
But being with a partner on a good day is like a 9. And then and I joke with my clients because most of my clients, their partners find out about their porn use. They then they lie to them and manipulate them on accident. Those are the defense mechanisms. So that's why I'm like, on a good day, it's a 9. If your partner knows about your situation, you're dealing with like a 4, right? So
mm,
now porn's a 20 and your partner's a 7. You have a 13-point gap in arousal.
mm-hmm,
That's legit. And then for many men who desensitize the D2 dopamine receptors in the brain so much, ED pills don't even work.
mm,
And many of the people I work with, they try ED pills and they work on and off for a little while, then they don't work. And that's what really freaks them out. And the answer there is that there needs to be enough stimulation or enough ability to be stimulated in the brain for the ED pills to work. So if it's so desensitized, which I can see on a map,
mm-hmm,
then the pills don't work at all.
mm. Is there anybody is it um nature versus nurture? Is there any people that are more inclined to have problems with these addictions than others, just based off of genetics?
Yes. So it's nature, nurture, and navigation. And I write
Mm,
about it in my book, Mind Over Explicit
mm-hmm,
Matter. So nature, I don't like to say genetic. I like to
mm-hmm,
say familial. But like if we're talking about genetics, there's a whole body of literature on epigenetics. And if you know this from a fitness standpoint, you should love this because it's totally cool. And neuromodulation technologies, what I do falls into the category of basically modalities that help to empower epigenetics. Epigenetics means above genetics.
mm-hmm,
So, like, we know that we have a genetic code, and the way that I talk about it is familial. Brains don't fall far from the tree, right?
mm-hmm.
Nervous systems very much are alike in a family. I grew up in a family. I have 5 brothers and sisters. There's 6 of us, and my parents are still alive. I've seen everybody's brains. Everybody's was the same until one person, that now the black sheep, started to rewire my brain. So like my parents and my family, they're wired basically to be stressed out, and we'll leave it at that. But using epigenetics and using modalities, I was able to rise above. Then using my mind and body, I was able to sync that up. That's what epigenetics is. So that's the
Mm,
nature part. Nurture is the environment that you grow up in, which that is definitely a factor. So I told you that my approach is a neuro-bio-psycho-social approach. I didn't tell you that part yet because environment is very important. And I alluded to it with change your physical and mental environment, but the last part is the best. Navigation. And this is proven scientifically. Like in any situation, there's choice on how you navigate. And I want to try to empower people to be able to make the choices. But when it comes to porn addiction or screen compulsions, like the dysfunction in the brain robs the person of the choice. So that's why I want people to know, like, yeah, you might have a predisposition, but you can rise above that. I've done it.
mm-hmm.
Like it's doable. Many thousands, millions of people have done it. Your environment matters. So maybe you've got to change your environment and you need to learn how to navigate in a different way.
Mm.
Then you get the outcome that you want.
Yeah, I asked that because I realized very early on in my youth that I had a tendency towards getting sucked into things and addiction like very easily. And so I don't do addictive things. I don't drink. I don't do any drug. I don't do any of that because I like it's super easy for me to get sucked in. Like I remember as a youth, video games would come out. I couldn't just play with friends. I was like, I need to be the best. I don't care if it's fun. And I'd start doing all these
Mhm.
things. And
Mhm.
like the dopamine hit was really there for me. So I realized like very
Yeah,
early on, it's
definitely.
like, hey, I need to toe this line very,
Mhm.
very carefully. And
Yeah,
that seems to be the
that's
case.
interesting because so, like, going back to that question, I said brains don't fall far from the tree, like the
Hmm.
genetic component. So, really well, let me ask you this first. Is anybody else in your family like that?
Yes, I have
Or
4 younger siblings. I'm the
yeah,
oldest. We're all very
okay.
competitive. We all do
Okay.
crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
so then that's probably more like a, family brain
Yeah.
performance pattern. But it is true, like, that's the essence and the beauty of neurodiversity, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody's brain's different. So my brain, I don't have the propensity for that. I have the propensity to overwork myself into oblivion. So like this is what I'm talking about in navigation. Like I recognized that a long time ago. Honestly, it took me way too long to put the guardrails on. I got 2 PhDs simultaneously. Why get 1 when you could do double the work and get 2? You know what I mean? Like,
My wife's getting her MD PhD right now. So
So
she's in the
see,
boat.
so see,
Yeah.
well, her brain probably falls more like mine. But so like,
Probably.
hopefully she'll recognize and go, okay, like in my life, I saw my friend Molly yesterday, and she's so funny because she's like, I went to the pool because I knew if I stayed home, I'd just keep working. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like it was Sunday. So I love that where she's like, so it's important that if you know you're going to get sucked into things, you put the guardrails on that
hmm.
because you do want to create the life that you want. And everybody's brain's different. And yes, there's, nature, nurture, navigation, but you learned how to navigate it, right? Which is cool
I
because
did.
you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. I'm going to navigate this, my neurodiversity. I'm going to set myself up for optimization to get the life that I want.
Hmm. Yeah. It was a learning spell. It's been good, but even now, it's like, oh, I want to do this. It's like, well, can you navigate? Can you put on the guide rails to do it without burning out or without doing it properly? And that's how I
Hmm.
navigate all the things. Your book,
Yep.
uh,
Yeah.
great title, by the way. Mind over explicit
Yeah.
matter. Like
Thanks.
that's a
Yeah.
wonderful title.
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah.
Who's it for? Who should be reading it?
Yeah. So this book is really for people who are, sucked into pornography or
Mm,
explicit content or even hypersexuality that's not screen based. It is the formula for recovery. So in the book, there's brain hack strategies. It's an all encompassing tool that you can use. But it also talks about the technology that I use so that if you find that the book, isn't enough, don't be, concerned because that is the case for most people. It's published through HarperCollins, and they really wanted me to take the aspects of the technology out. And I understand because they want books to be a full, complete experience without sending anybody. And I'm like, no, it's got to stay in here because I don't want people reading it and becoming hopeless or having less hope because now they read this book that's supposed to have everything, but they're still struggling. I want them to know like, yes, hopefully you can do it with your mind and body, but if not, it's because the dysfunction and the technology exists.
mm,
But I have to tell you, I'm working on my next book, which I'm really excited. I'm calling it Miswired by the Algorithm. I don't know if that's what it will stay,
hmm.
but it is on screens, globally. I am excited to focus primarily. We'll see if this remains the focus too. I want to focus on the relationships that happen within social media. They're called parasocial relationships. They're transactional relationships. It comes from an experience that my daughter had. My first book comes from an experience with a client who's a really close friend of mine, and he divulged to me that he watches porn. And back then I didn't care. Like, I'm like, porn? I'm not like an anti-porn. I'm a neuroscientist who cares about people's brains and lives.
Mm,
So that's where the first book came from. The second book, my daughter gave me permission to share her story where basically like this boy I don't even know that he meant to, was basically manipulating her through the likes and the hearts. And this is happening to millions of people where just using content that young women are putting out, and then men are actually doing more of the like controlling of that, it's really disruptive to development. And that's why I say like social media, what it lacks in intensity, it's making up for in frequency.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the through line in Miswired by the Algorithm. And, going back to your question, what do I do just to screen time in general? That book is going to be filled with, okay, this is how you back out of excessive screen use, understanding all the dopamine at the core of it, understanding the transactions that happen to all of us, and getting a grip on that.
Mm. That'll be a great one. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to that one.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
You just started writing it, so I assume we have no timeline.
Yeah, no, my literary agent has it, and it's going out to yeah, so
Awesome.
I'm hoping it'll be within the year.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
What are some Can you give me, I guess we've been talking about porn addiction, particularly in in my brain I always think men, but what are the stats versus men versus women when it comes to porn addiction, and just in general, how many people are addicted?
Yeah. So, and again, I write it in the book, but what studies show, but again, like you have to remember, this is of the people who are willing to talk about it
Yeah.
in studies. So, like, that
Mhm.
is the tricky part when it comes to this aspect. But the studies show that basically across the spectrum of all ages, the lifespan, that people of basically all ages from 8 up say that they consume porn regularly, which that's the most concerning of it. By far, it's men. It's above 90% of men consume porn with high regularity. Women, it's like it at last I looked, it was at like 45%. And I write about the differences in the book too. For women, it's more erotica and
Mm.
fantasy opposed to like high level visual and auditory stimulation. So there are,
Mhm.
some stark differences there. I write about the evolutionary aspect too, like Darwinism and going back
Mm.
to pair bonding and that. Like, I thought that was a really cool thing to include in the book, because when it comes to supernormal stimuli, I find this fascinating is that it basically is capitalizing on what are the most dopamine producing activities in real life, but distorting it. So there's a really cool study, actually a handful of them from this one researcher. And the one study is with butterflies, and they painted the butterflies' wings very bright patterns that don't exist in nature. And the male butterflies flock to the artificial butterflies for mating more
Mm.
than the so that's the point of supernormal stimuli. It takes a natural high level response in the system for dopamine, twists it, distorts it, and then pulls people in that direction. So in the book too, if you know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I've always
Mhm.
thought is so cool because it's about self-actualization, becoming the very best version of yourself, which is what I want people to do. It shows basically that pornography consumption distorts sexuality, which is a basic survival need, and it keeps you at the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy, just stuck looking for sex because, like, sheer survival mode, which you can never go up the pyramid to thrival mode, as I call it.
Mm.
So, like, we just have a generation of people who are just completely stuck in survival. That's the loneliness aspect, and they don't even realize it's their phones that are doing it to them.
Yeah, James Ellis, who I mentioned earlier, he talks about social media and phones is the junk food of like connection. It's like you get on there, you get that little hit, and you feel like you're getting you're eating a meal. He equates it to eating a meal, but you're not having any of the micronutrients or vitamins or minerals or anything like that. And then you come
Hmm.
off and you crash and you're worse than before, and it just
Hmm.
perpetuates that
Yeah,
loneliness cycle.
absolutely. Yeah. And food is dopamine producing, and junk
Yeah.
food distorts that. And the junk food industry, and I've made the analogy or the correlation between the junk food industry and pornography in the exact same way, right?
Mm.
Like, we know that Doritos or what is it? No, is it Lay's? You can't just eat one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or,
Can't just eat
like,
one.
you just can't eat one because it's salt, it's sugar, it's fat, right? Like,
Hmm.
with my
Yeah.
kids, all we do now is air fried chicken, steam rice. You should see everybody like this again. You know what I mean? Everybody's dying for something like, yep, kids, lock in. We've got our air fried chicken, we got our steamed rice and our sauteed vegetables, but that's not high level dopamine. That's just
Yeah.
food that helps your body thrive, right?
Mm.
So that is the
Mhm.
difference. It doesn't hit the same as a Big Mac, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talking about what I know or what we were talking about earlier, I know myself, no junk foods in this house because
Uh-huh.
I can't
Uh-huh.
just eat one. I'll eat the whole bag.
Uh-huh.
So I have to
Uh-huh.
navigate that. So we just don't have any stuff in our
Yeah.
home. You mentioned something and I wanted to ask you this because it totally sparked it. I see it on online all the time. Women's romantasy, fantasy style books like the 50 Shades of Grey, the Court of Thorn and Rose, all this stuff. You see the comments, you're like, from like males, they're like, "Oh, this is the same as porn," and the females defend it. Is it the same as porn for the female? Is there any equivalency there?
No, but
No.
no, but like similarly, right?
Mm,
Like the erotica, I mean, it's nowhere near the level of,
mm,
I talk about it in my book too. Like I talk
mm,
about 50 Shades of Grey, but think about this. This is so interesting is that 50 Shades of Grey, when it came out, after that, there were the highest number of injuries from sex toys, but
mm,
it was the women that were injured. So,
mhm,
like, if you just think about this logically, like, women are buying into the objectification. And in the book, I talk about rape culture, Game of Thrones. In Game of
mhm,
Thrones, like, the show, they added all the rape scenes. They weren't even in the books. And so, like, they add it for where pop culture is right now, getting dopamine hits, especially when it comes to men in pornography consumption, it's laden with violence. So, like, no, like, rape scenes from Game of Thrones versus, like, more of that fantasy. So they don't compare in terms of supernormal stimuli. But at the same time, like, yes, that's what women are more into opposed to men, but
mm.
they're not the same level of supernormal stimuli.
I
Women get
understand.
addicted to pornography at those very high levels too, but um, just women aren't consuming it as much as men. The women who do consume it, what scientific studies show is that actually for the female brain, if it falls into that pattern of addiction, it's more difficult for them to step out. So, because the dopamine has a stronger pull to a certain extent.
What would you say to the person listening to this podcast who is maybe struggling with porn? Is there any message you'd leave them with?
I would leave them with the message that if they want to step away, because I'm only here really to help people, I am here to create awareness. Like, I want them to know it's not serving them. I
Mm,
totally get it feels like it's serving you. And
mhm,
it really does. It really feels like it's serving you until you cross a threshold.
mhm,
One thing I want people to know is like, I'm in a very unique position. Honestly, I think I'm probably the only person in the world in this position. I can see how people's brains perform. I've heard tens of thousands of stories from talking to people personally, and I've heard the phrase, "I thought I was taking this one to the grave more than I should," right? Like
mm,
people are struggling, and the stories they tell me, they think it's the most unique, worst thing I've ever heard of what porn has got them wrapped up in. But it's a version of the story that I hear all the time. And it's
mhm,
just a matter of what level it's at. That's what's on the other side for most people. It doesn't get better. You're either in an upward spiral in your life or a downward spiral. They're called feedback loops. I always
mm.
say there's no such thing as a horizontal spiral. So if you are getting pulled into porn, especially if you feel that downward spiral, that's why I want people to know there's technology exists that breaks that. I literally consider my work to be like I stop the downward spiral and I create the upward spiral
Mm.
for people. And then I get them moving in the right direction for the rest of their life. So, if you watch porn and you don't think it's a big deal, I want you to know it is eventually, and then secondarily, if you know it's a big deal, but you can't stop, I want you to know there's technology that can help.
Well, I like to close every podcast with two questions. The first being, who do you think I should speak to next and why? And then the second,
Mm.
and I'm going to phrase this a little different because you're an author, but I always say, give me a book that you'd most recommend. Give me your own book and then give me another one.
Okay, so let me think. Oh, okay, this is not having to do. I was just trying to think of like one of the most recent books that I've been reading. A really cool book that I just read, which is changing my parenting. I love when a book really changes your framework. It's called Die with Zero. if you know that book. It's
I
about
do know it.
finances and about
Yeah.
like living on purpose. I really recommend that because I'm kind of at the point in my life where I have young adult kids, and I really believe the number one thing that we should be striving for is purpose and passion in our life.
Mhm.
And, I get to invest in them. And it's really empowered me to do that. So
Mhm.
I think that book is totally awesome, and it would reframe. I love when you get a reframe and you just feel so empowered. And I think that book will do it. And then who to have on next? This is a very good question, and nobody's popping off in my brain. Let me think. Nothing. I've got a blank space up there. Let me think harder. Um, I don't know. In terms of, have you had Ben Greenfield on?
I am not. I would love to have Ben Greenfield
Okay,
on. He
he
is
would be cool. I think that's a
yeah.
good one. If you haven't
It
had Ben Greenfield, Ben Greenfield, I was trying to think of like,
mhm.
people in your space who might be cool. Because first of all, he's a totally tech savvy kind of
Yeah.
guy. He uses a lot of tech. I
Mhm.
really love that he's anchored into kind of spirituality. And
Mhm.
from my perspective, I'm always converting spirituality into neuroscience, but like I want people to be the divinely inspired version of themselves. And then
Mm.
obviously he's totally into fitness and health and
Yeah.
wellness. I think he'd be really cool. Uh
Yeah.
when I talked with him, he asked me to send 2 books for his twin boys. I'm like, "Yes, I love that." I mailed them right off to him. You know what I mean?
Y
Like that's how
yeah.
you generationally, impact legacy. I love that.
That speaking of it, I mean, just kind of remind me with the young exposure that we are seeing to porn, with the access to social media, with smartphones, is there any protocols that parents should be putting into place for their young kids? My wife and I, we hit 2 years of marriage. We're planning on having kids soon, and that's something I
Beautiful,
want to start
beautiful.
thinking of. I want to
Beautiful.
set them up for
Yes.
success.
Okay. So first of all, let me tell you, and this is not a plug, but it's might as well. Here we go. Is that my son Declan? I told you he's championing. Now that he's off his bender. Don't tell him I
Mhm.
told you, but now that he's off his Minecraft bender, he is championing our nonprofit, which is called the
Mm.
Supernormal Project. Right? It's a double
Mhm.
entendre addressing supernormal stimuli and helping people become supernormal versions of themselves in their real life. But there's a parent path,
Mm.
and it's a nonprofit, very affordable programs that the basically when you invest in it, it's a donation also. It's a 501c3. So that would
Mm.
be really cool if you want lots of. I was on Zoom with my accountant, like, she helps me run everything, and I'm telling her all about, I have to tell her about all the programs so she can like make sure she kind of is like a fractional CFO type of thing.
Mhm.
So anyways, 30 minutes later, we're talking about the parent path. And I'm like, listen, sister, we got to get back to the accounting. I'm like, you're going to have to buy that program because she has young kids. And
Mm.
she's like, this is insane. This is fascinating. But the number one thing I think parents should know, and again, I have 5 children, and my kids
Mhm.
are called digital natives. They do
Mm.
not like that term, by the way, but they are the first generation to grow up with phones, right? So, like,
Mhm.
thankfully, I'm actually just, I guess, educated and intuitive on this because I think I did a pretty good job. One thing I want you to know is each kid will struggle differently with technology. It's not you have to have the skills, not a set of rules, right? You have to build the skill to have discernment to know when. I always tell my kids, I'm your frontal lobe till you're 28. You're
Yeah.
welcome. And so they know if they can use their screens, if you're safe and healthy, it's a privilege you get to keep. If your safety or your health is at risk, I got to step in frontal lobe. And that's how I do it. And I've always done it. And then I co-regulate. I don't punish them. I stay in it with them until they got it again.
Mhm.
I've had to do it in many different ways. But the one thing I was going to tell you is have a charging station down in
Mhm.
an area. Do not let your kids take their tech into their bedroom. That's the number
Mhm.
one thing. And you need to start the minute they're born, because if you try to start like I did that too late, and that was a struggle.
Mhm.
Um, and then they will give you flack, but you will have to just stay committed to the boundary of no computers, no phones in your bedroom. You go in your bedroom to relax and to sleep, and you use those things in a public space. You will save them from all the shenanigans.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
then, like,
That
when things happen, the cool thing is if you, and just here's one more thing.
yeah, please.
Communicate. Don't be afraid to communicate. Most people can't. You do really have to be regulated to be able to like find out a thing and go in and not yell at your child, be able to go, okay, I know this is going on. Let's talk about this. And a couple shenanigans happened with my youngest. We call them shenanigans. We're Irish. That's where my husband. That's where my husband was born. That's where his citizenship. So I come in, she sees me. Like they all know, they feel it on me. Like, but so something happened, and I said to her, okay. I gave her an exercise of backing up the experience to the flexion points where new choices could have been made. Like
Mm,
of course, she was not allowed to use her tech, but it's empowering her to go, okay, this was a flexion point where if I chose differently, I would have got a different outcome. Here's another one. Like, that's what regulation is about. It's about staying in it with them and not being afraid to hear some things that, like, I never told my parents anything. I still don't. How
mm.
are you? Rainbows and sunshine. Oh, I gotta go. I saw a unicorn pass by. Right?
Yeah.
Because I know they couldn't handle it. They would crumble under the real deal, or it would stress them out, or I'd be in trouble.
Mm. I love those ideas for doing that. I mean, my kids weren't gonna allowed to have tech in their room anyway, purely from a health and wellness. I was like, no,
Uh-huh.
this room's for sleeping. We're gonna have it
Uh-huh.
blacked out. So because
Yes,
even now, my
yes.
wife and I, we don't have any tech in our room, so that's great. Well, Trish,
Number one.
thank you
Mhm.
so much for your time. This
Yeah,
was
of
an
course.
absolute
Yeah.
pleasure to get to talk to you. Where
No,
can
good.
people follow
Yeah.
you and get more of your work?
Yeah, so at drtrishleigh.com, basically all roads lead out from there. But I do have a large YouTube channel, especially for
Hmm.
pornography addiction. We are now rounding it out to all screens, getting ready for Miswired by the Algorithm, kind of trying to approach it, from a little bit side angle. The nonprofit is at the supernormalproject.org. That way, there's programs. Unplugged is a prevention program. So my work's really for people who really struggle in my
Hmm.
practice, but this nonprofit is to go upstream, especially for parents and young people. Unplugs prevention, just learn how all this stuff works. Then we do have a reset program, like if you feel like you need some remediation. Then we have the parent path, and then we are also partnering with organizations in the digital collective. So, yeah. So, drtrishleigh.com.
Perfect. I'll have links to those as well. You also have a
Yeah,
podcast, don't
thank you.
you?
Yeah, it is, Dr. Trish Leigh. I don't have guests, though. I have toyed with the idea of I had guests on, like, a long time ago, but then
Mm-hmm.
it's a bandwidth thing.
Mm.
But I'm like, it's so fun doing podcasts that, and you get to meet so many people. I was gonna put it
Yes.
back in, but honestly, it's really empowering that I didn't because I told you I will max myself out until I'm
Mm-hmm.
crawling across the floor wondering why I'm doing everything I'm doing.
Yeah, I listened to a few of your episodes and stuff to help prep, and you do a fantastic job. And I'm always impressed
Thanks.
by solo podcast hosts. I'm like, I can
Yeah.
hide behind the guys with good questions and a great guest. It's so much more difficult to do it solo.
Well, I'm telling you, I just started all of this. I've been a college professor, and then when I found out about the porn thing with my client slash friend, I always had this is a great story. It's a short one too. I had a YouTube channel where I would talk about brain stuff, 300 views, but I still love doing it. I still do it. Um, then I found out about the porn thing. I make a new channel. And this is before like everybody was doing YouTube. I make a new
Uh-huh.
channel and there's a video. It's 2 minutes and 16 seconds long, I think. And it's like, don't watch porn. Porn damages your brain. I say nothing real, nothing neuroscientific. It was mostly from my heart. And then
Mm.
a couple months later, I get a notification. Your video's been viewed a couple million times. And I'm like, what video? I go in the original channel, can't find it. I totally forget I made that porn addiction
Yeah.
video. I'm like, it's the porn addiction video. I look in, it's got millions of views and all these comments from the first people who subscribed to the channel asking me to make more content, thanking me for the help. And man, it lit a fire. But think about the power that people have, even as just viewers or, you know, if all those comments would have been negative, I probably would have not gone for it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then I developed my programs. I wrote the book before the literary agent reached out. He reached out. He's like, "Do you ever think about writing a book?" I'm like, "I have one written."
Mm.
So I really am on a mission to help people, and I think
Yeah. It's amazing. And I
hopefully.
think it's needed. Like you think about the stigma and the quiet and like the people don't talk about viewing porn or their porn addiction and they're afraid of how they'll be looked at like third party. Like if I think of anybody I know, if they came out with like being addicted to to drugs, like, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like, that makes sense, like,
Yeah.
getting addicted to the drugs, but if somebody says, "Hey, I'm addicted to porn," it's like, "What do you mean?" Like, just stop, and they don't have the
Yeah.
understanding that's a real addiction.
It is, and I've heard so many stories now, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And my point about the YouTube channel was I started it and I was like talking to my friend, Sam, I call him in the book. Like all the videos were what like I wanted to say to, and that's why the podcast, then I had some guests on, but I'm like, this feels weird because I'm not talking to one guy anymore. So like that's why I went back to and that's why it feels a little weird because I created these briefs, which are more like a class, but I like them because they're more educational. But then I still have like the video where I talk to you, just one person, and let you know like the thing that you're experiencing, it creates so much shame. That's my point about knowing people's stories. If you don't know the stories that I know, you just literally have no clue how bad this can get. It can get so wrapped up in people's lives are, really crumbling and they don't tell anybody. It's all in secret. The isolation feeds it. It really is terrible. I just said to the client that it was a brain map. So it's the first, time I met this person and he's telling me part of his story and I'm like, that's terrible. And I'm like, just so you know, it's terrible for you. I don't mean it's terrible of you. It's terrible
Mm,
for you. Everything that you're experiencing, I know how it goes. And it is absolutely terrible that pornography consumption has gotten you to the place that you're at. Like people don't know, an 8-year-old doesn't know that in 30 years, this is going to blow up his marriage, right? Like
mhm,
this is what we're dealing with. This is it. So that's why I want people to know at whatever age they're at, it's not worth it. It's just not
mm,
worth it. Spend the time and energy that you're spending in porn. If you can walk away from it now, building intimacy in the real world, like go chase down your dreams, earn the dopamine. That's what I've
mm.
been saying lately. Go earn it. Your brain will thank you.
Love it. Well, and I love the work that you're doing. And again, thank you
Thank you.
so much for your time. This was a great
Yeah,
conversation, and I
no
learned a lot
problem.
from you.
Oh, awesome.